Hey everybody, Jim here with another video for you. This is Shocktober Volume 8. Werewolf, their wolf, their castle. But before we begin, at the end of this video, if you like what you see, please consider giving me a thumbs up, a possible subscribe. Most importantly, leave comments below. Let me know what some of your favorite movies are that have to do with werewolves or just wolf-adjacent properties. Now, originally I was just going to do the usual, let's throw out some werewolf movies here, but I was looking into my collection, and quite honestly, I've got a lot of movies that would fit into the category, but they're not really werewolf movies. So we're going to have a little bit of a mixture here. And there's one movie on the list that isn't even a horror movie, but I would argue it's scarier than a couple of the movies on this list. But of course, the whole werewolf thing started way back when with the Universal Monsters with Lon Chaney Jr. and such. That was my introduction to him, seeing that old black and white movie. Actually, it was probably Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which included Frankenstein, Dracula, and the Wolfman. And the Wolfman was actually a good guy in that movie. But speaking of Universal Monsters, we're going to start off with their remake of the Wolfman that came out about 15 years ago, starring Benicio del Toro, Anthony Hopkins, Hugo Weaving, and Emily Blunt, among many others. And this movie is getting remade again. It's coming out, I believe, in the spring. And it's going to be written and directed by Lee Winnell, who also remade The Invisible Man. Just saw a little teaser of that movie, and again, it's a teaser, so it's hard to really judge. But this movie actually gets a lot of crap, and I like it. The only problem I've got with it, they hired Rick Baker to do the effects for this movie. And apparently Universal, at the last moment, decided to change it all to CG, and that kills the movie to me. The performances are there. The story, but that CG is what kills this movie, and it's a shame because, again, Rick Baker did the makeup. We'll get back to Rick Baker at the end of this video. Now, this isn't necessarily a werewolf movie. This is actually a kids movie, but it's a great way to introduce kids into horror. And this is The Monster Squad. This was directed by Fred Dekker and written by Fred Dekker and Shane Black, of all people. And this movie involves kids that come across real-life versions of Dracula, Frankenstein, the Creature from the Black Lagoon, and Wolfman, among others. And this movie's got most famous line in it is where a kid kicks the Wolfman in the nuts, doubles him over, and then turns around, looks at his friend and says, "Holy shit, Wolfman's got nards." This is a really fun movie for kids. This is the non-horror movie title that I was talking about, but it definitely has to do with wolves. And again, there are moments in this movie that are absolutely nerve-shattering. This is The Gray, by the way, starring Liam Neeson and Frank Grillo, among others. I saw this theatrically. And the sound design in this movie, if you're playing it on a good system with the lights off, it's terrifying. It really is. And again, this is not a horror movie, but it kind of is because, again, this movie is kind of like it would fit into the survival horror genre in a way. But the wolves, Liam Neeson against the wolves, it doesn't get any better than that. Again, I know I cheated with this one. I don't care. Anytime I can get a chance to talk about The Gray, I'm going to take it. Now, this one is not a werewolf movie, but it gets lumped in to two other great movies that came out the same year in 1981. We're talking about Wolfen. This one stars Albert Finney and the late, great Gregory Hines, among others. This one's directed by Michael Wadley. And not only is this not a werewolf movie, this movie invented Predator vision, in my eyes. If you've ever seen the Predator movies, you know what I'm talking about. This movie's great. And again, it's definitely not a werewolf movie. And technically it is a horror movie, but it's more of a thriller. But yeah, Wolfen is a great movie. If you've never checked it out, please do. This one is just batshit crazy. It's the only way to describe it. Brotherhood of the Wolf. Directed by Christoph Gaines and starring Monica Bellucci, Vincent Cassel, and the incredible Mark Dacascos, among other people. And this movie is literally like 20 genres jammed into one and hit frappe. And for half the movie, they think they're going after a werewolf creature. It turns out not to really be that. I'm not really going to go into what this plot is because, again, this is one of those movies you don't watch for plot. You watch for just a good old time, and this movie certainly is. Check this one out if you haven't seen it. Okay, the rest of these are werewolf movies. And a couple of them are pretty damn goofy, but that's okay. First one we're going to start off with is Stephen King's Silver Bullet. This came out in 1985. It's directed by Daniel Attias, and it stars Corey Feldman, Everett McGill, and say it with me, everybody. I haven't said it in a long time. Crazy Gary Busey. And Crazy Gary Busey is insane in this movie. But yeah, this movie, again, technically it's a horror movie. I have always thought of it as a dark comedy. But either way, Silver Bullet is extremely, extremely entertaining. You want to talk about batshit crazy werewolf movies? This one is really off the charts weird. Full Eclipse. And this is probably the least known movie on my list here. This was originally an HBO movie. And it stars Mario Van Peebles, Patsy Kensit, and Bruce Payne, among others. And it's directed by Anthony Hickox. Basically, these cops inject this serum that turns them into super cops. But the drawback is that if there's a full moon, it kind of turns them into werewolves. And this movie doesn't make a lick of sense. It's really cheesy. I remember seeing this on HBO back in the day and loved it back then. Completely forgot about it. And then just happened to run across this at the Goodwill store one day and jumped on it and watched it and went, wow, is this movie cheesy? But if you're into that sort of thing, you'll enjoy this movie. This movie, I adore. We're talking about Neil Marshall's Dog Soldiers. We went from werewolf cops to soldiers fighting werewolves. This one stars Sean Pertwee, Liam Cunningham, and Kevin McKidd, among others. This one I rented as a blind buy at Blockbuster Video way back in the day. And the only reason why I did was because I remember a blurb in Fangoria magazine back in the day that was just talking about this crazy British werewolf movie that was coming out where it was more of an action movie. And I just happened to see this in the bin and picked it up, went home, watched it, and immediately called 3 friends and told them to get their asses over and watch this bug nuts crazy werewolf movie. I love Dog Soldiers so much. It's still my favorite Neil Marshall film. And I know most people would say The Descent, which again, I love The Descent, but Dog Soldiers is still my favorite Neil Marshall film. Earlier in Wolfen, I talked about that was the Summer of the Werewolves, 1981, and here's one of them. Joe Dante's immortal classic, The Howling, starring Dee Wallace, Patrick McNee, and Christopher Wallace, Dee Wallace's husband, or Christopher Young, I'm sorry, who passed away, unfortunately. The Howling I actually saw after the last film on our list, but I still love it. I absolutely love The Howling. Again, it's one of Joe Dante's best films, as far as entertainment value goes. Of course, he went on to bigger things later in his career, bigger budgets and such. But The Howling it's like Silver Bullet, it's got a dark comedy streak to it. And there's certain things in this movie that are still absolutely hilarious to me. Love the cameos by people like John Carradine and Slim Pickens and such. But yeah, The Howling's awesome. But we're going to finish it on the werewolf movie of 1981, and it might be the greatest werewolf movie of all time. It is, in my opinion. And we're talking about John Landis's written and directed An American Werewolf in London, starring David Naughton, Griffin Dunn, and Jenny Agutter, who I've been in love with more or less my entire life. Not only is this the greatest werewolf movie, in my opinion, it's definitely still the greatest werewolf transformation by Rick Baker, who I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this video. He won the first Best Special Effects Makeup Academy Award for this film. The reason why he won the first one was because there was no such thing. They invented that award specifically for this movie. Because when the transformation sequence happens in this movie, everybody was blown away, including me. I saw this movie theatrically in 1981 when I was 14 years old on a Sunday matinee with one of my best friends and his mom. His mom took us because we were underage, of course. And it was a double feature of this and Halloween 2. And when I say second run theater, I mean it. It had a hole in the ceiling where rain would come in. And the concession stand looked like you needed a tetanus shot if you bought anything from it, outside of maybe a soda. The price of the ticket, 75 cents. For two classic 80s movies, in my opinion. One of them for sure. But a double feature of Halloween 2 and American Werewolf in London for 75 cents. That's a memory I will always hold dear. But I hold it dear more so because, again, this movie, unlike many, many films, much less one that is over 40 years old, stand the test of time the way that this one does. The effects are still absolutely amazing on this movie. And not only the effects, but the story, the acting, everything. This is a great, great film. And I will love it till the day I die. And that's the end of this edition of Shocktober. Werewolf, their castle. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully you enjoyed my dad joke at the beginning. Anyone who doesn't understand what the hell I'm talking about, that's a classic line from Young Frankenstein. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give me a thumbs up, a possible subscribe. But most importantly, please leave comments below. I know there's a lot of werewolf movies I didn't include, but tell me some of your favorites. And until the next time, I hope everybody's having a great one, and we'll see you then.